Hey, everybody. Welcome to ClearedJobs.Net Military Monday. My name is Bob Wheeler, and we're going to be talking about compensation, a big topic that transitioning veterans, I think sometimes it's one of the things that we have the most questions about as we're getting ready to do things. So with me today from ClearedJobs.Net is Sarah McMurrow. She's going to be helping us out today, and we're going to be talking to Mr. Jonathan Everhardt. He is the talent acquisition manager from SOSi, a veteran, a guy who's done some stuff in the past as far as moving over, done the transitioning veteran piece, and now he's doing the recruiting, the talent acquisition stuff. So first of all, Sarah, do you want to say hello really quickly, and then we'll let Jonathan introduce himself?
Sure. Yes. So, hi, everyone. I'm Sarah McMurrow. I've been here for about 8, 9 years now. And, having been in the National Guard myself, but also being a military spouse, I kind of have an understanding from the military side, as well as having been a recruiter, hearing a lot of these questions that Jonathan's going to be touching on. So, I'm excited to share the information that we get.
Yeah, and while Jonathan says hello, if you're out there in LinkedIn world and you want to let us know who you are, you can feel free to throw some comments in there. Let us know what branch you're in, when you're getting out, that kind of thing. And as we're going through, if you have any questions, if we can catch them and we can slide them in there, we're happy to do so. While they're doing that, Jonathan, you want to say hello to everybody? Give us some information about your background and where you come from?
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you for allowing me to be here. I'm definitely looking forward to this. My name is Jonathan Everhardt. I am a talent acquisition manager with SOSi, SOS International. We are a family-owned government contractor based out of the Reston, Virginia area. Basically, I transitioned here out of the Marine Corps in 2017. I retired from the Marine Corps. And moved directly into here to SOSi to become a recruiter. And then at which point, after a few years, I eventually moved over to take over my own team. And I'm currently leading the technology and engineering business unit recruiting for the business here. And I have a team of 6 recruiters that work for me. So definitely with my experience coming out of the military and then the transition and recruiting primarily for DoD contracts, I feel I've got a good amount of experience. Definitely open to sharing that experience and seeing whoever we can help out and pass that knowledge on to somebody going through the same situation. So again, pleasure to be here, and thanks for the introduction.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about compensation because, like we said, I mean, I was in the Navy for 20 years. Jonathan was in the Marine Corps. Sarah, National Guard. Her husband's in the Army. We know when you're getting out that there's a lot of things out there, and maybe you understand the basics of like compensation is more than just your pay and stuff like that. But it really is. It's not only one of the hardest things to figure out, but a lot of times as a veteran, you don't even know, who to ask the questions to. So we're going to try to answer some questions today that tend to be on the minds of those veterans. And I know we kind of got these topics because Jonathan talked to some of the veterans there at SOSi to kind of say, hey, what were your concerns when you were getting out? So we're going to start off first with Jonathan. You said you retired from the Marine Corps. One of the big questions folks have is like, hey, if I got a military pension, how does that affect my pay in the other side?
So yeah, very, very good question, because that's something that I went through myself. I had my own military pension, and I think my feedback here should be that it should not affect your salary whatsoever. Your military pension, much like any military disability that you have, is something that was earned or that you receive from your experience while in the military, while your salary on the civilian side, on the corporate side, is specific to the position that you are interviewing and seeking employment for. So that position's salary should be based off of your education, experience, and skills, and there should be no other factors that go into that. Basically, I think service members sometimes worry that they're going to end up being lowballed, or that they're not going to get the salary for what they're most qualified for. And what I'm here to say is it should not be that way. It should be strictly based off of what you bring to the table with the current company that you're interviewing for.
Yeah, and Sarah, one of the things we talked about was also, besides just the pension part, but there's benefits that come with it, and we were talking about healthcare, those kind of things. So what were the questions that some of the veterans had about like TRICARE and healthcare and how that's going to affect things, Sarah?
Right. That's something that, is probably one of the most common questions that I've heard, even in my recruiting experience as well, is, well, I'm coming from the military. I have retired. I have TRICARE. I don't need the company benefits. So can I get a higher pay when I get hired with this company because I don't need the medical? I think that's a really common question. And I'd love to hear your feedback on that, Jonathan, and what your recruiters and you have been telling, the candidates that you talk with.
So it's actually a very good question because that was one of the questions I had when I did my first salary negotiation here at SOSi. Is I do not need benefits. I have TRICARE. My family, we're all taken care of. And what I quickly learned was that salary and benefits come from two different pots of money usually, and so along these lines, I would definitely encourage these questions to be had with your recruiters as you're interviewing for positions. I would try and talk about this as early on in the process as possible. What I, as I mentioned, what I learned was that the benefits comes from a different pot of money, and normally they're not willing to pay you extra, so to speak, but it doesn't hurt you from asking for more money in your salary, sort of to counter that. What I would say is don't hesitate, to ask for a little bit more in salary and see what they say. It doesn't always hurt to ask the question, but you do need to consider that your salary, whether it's for a government contract position or for a corporate position, the benefits that come with that are come from a different pot of money, so to speak. And then I would also say, when it comes to salary negotiation for that, if you're interviewing for more of a corporate job rather than for a government contract position, you might have a little bit more room to negotiate something like that. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, one of the other things with the healthcare does do, it can help you be open to maybe smaller companies or companies that don't have healthcare benefits, because you're bringing that with you. It might open up a bigger platform of things you could consider, I guess.
Right. Right. I think that's a really good point. And I love that you're telling the candidates to ask the question. Don't assume the answer to be one or the other, but in every situation where you're, earlier in the interview process, that, as a transitioning service member, that you need to ask, if it could possibly affect it, because like you said, there are situations where you may be able to get a little higher in that salary range because you bring your own benefits.
Jonathan, right. When should people ask? I mean, that she kind of brings it up, Sarah brings it up, but you don't know what you don't know. So is there a right time or a wrong time to start asking those kinds of questions when you're engaged with a recruiter?
Yes, absolutely. I think so. I think as early on as possible. So when you are going through the screening process with your recruiter, where there, that initial phone call, that initial conversation where you're talking about the qualifications of the position, it doesn't hurt to ask the recruiter the question what the salary is for the position, and then go from there. The reason why I feel you want to get that out of the way, and just so everyone is also aware, I feel that the recruiters want to get that out of the way also, just in case you end up finding out that you are too far apart in compensation, whether it's salary, total compensation, what have you. If you're too far apart, it's better to have these conversations up front before you go too far along into the process and find out that the position's just not going to work out. So I would get those questions out of the way as quickly as possible.
Very good. Very good. Other things we're ClearedJobs.Net. People use their clearances here. What does the clearance level do to your salary? And does it, I guess the question really kind of becomes, if I have a better clearance than what you're looking for, do I get more money because I've got a higher clearance than what you're asking for? Those types of things, or is it just strictly tied down to what the job description says?
That's a good question. We do get that fairly often, especially in the cleared industry in which we are. I think it's important to consider that when you're interviewing for a specific position, there is a salary that is aligned to that specific position. So you need to keep that in mind, and then also keep in mind that that salary is going to be aligned to the requirements that are on that job description. So again, it doesn't hurt to ask, but you'll know, and the recruiter should be able to let you know whether they have any room to go up. The reason why it may not be a bad idea to ask is there may be some professional development or some career development that you may be able to do. For example, if you're recruiting or interviewing for a position on a government contract that has other positions within the contract that may require a higher level of security clearance, then that may be good to know, and it may give you more to bring to the table to the company if they look at you and they consider you for that. So again, this is, I think, all within the conversations that you'll have. And if you haven't figured it out, when I was recruiting and talking to candidates, my screening calls would be rather lengthy. They would be 30, 45 minutes, because I would make sure that we got all of these questions out of the way, and that we knew exactly what each other were looking for when we move ahead and move forward in the hiring process. So to answer the question, it's initially it'll be based on what the position requires, and that there is going to be a salary that matches that position and job description. But there could be some other reasons why, maybe later on, where that this may come into play when you're asking these questions.
Yeah.
So could I ask a follow-up question to that then? So if, for example, the position that this person is interviewing for requires a secret job seeker or transitioning service member has a higher clearance as a TSSCI, can a company hold that clearance at the higher level? Because I'm assuming this is a question that we would probably hear, right, from these service members.
Yes. Job seekers are with clearances are always curious about that. I don't want to lose my clearance, right?
Exactly.
Is the thing. So I think with continuous monitoring and continuous evaluations going on, I don't think you would lose the clearance. What I think what I think would happen is they would pick you up where you are at, and you would just keep that level of your clearance, and the government would continuously monitor you and your background and so forth. And then if that position becomes available or something like that later on, you have that TSSCI or the top secret. The company just has to be able to move you into it at that point. They're not going to, so to speak, drop your clearance from a TS to a secret. But again, what would be a good idea, I think, is when you're going through these conversations with the recruiter, most companies will have a facility security officer, and oftentimes the recruiters can sort of ease any concerns that the candidates might have by getting you in connect. By having you contact these FSOs and security officers. They're more than willing to answer any questions if it helps to ease someone's concerns about their security clearance.
Hey, Jonathan, we had a question come in
okay.
from the group. How does the security clearance expiration date affect the decision-making process? So I guess they're probably trying to ask, would they not get the job because it's about to expire relatively soon or something like that? Is there any factor at all with the expiration date on whether they get the job or not, or get the interview?
The quick answer is no. It shouldn't. So what we do here at SOSi is when the recruiter is on the phone talking to the candidate, they will let them know that, hey, this position requires a secret security clearance or requires a top secret security clearance, what have you. Then what we will then do is we will forward some basic we call them security clearance forms, but basic forms so that we can verify the security clearance and that the candidate currently possesses that required security clearance. And what happens then is once we verify the clearance, our security folks will put a note on the record, in scope or current access to secret or what have you. And they put when their last investigation was done. But that really, that doesn't have any impact on us, because if you do get the job and you are close on that reinvestigation coming up, then our security department will just pick that up and conduct and complete, send the clearance investigation through. So there won't be any gap or anything like that. It'll just transfer, and you'll keep working as if nothing really happened.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for that question there, LinkedIn user, for throwing that out there. Sarah, you were actually a guard person. What kind of questions do reserves and guard folks have as far as experience goes? What was those questions about?
That's a really great question too. I think we got a lot of really great questions from Jonathan's team for sure. And so, in National Guard and Reserves, you might be traditionally, weekend a month and 2 weeks in the summer. But, what a lot of people want to know is what part of your experience counts towards the X number of years required for a job. So, for example, a job might need 8 to 10 years of experience. Well, if your 8 years was reserve component and maybe a year of that was deployed, maybe not, how does that time count, Jonathan? How does the SOSi team count that?
So really good question. This was a question actually that I had received early on once I started recruiting, and I quickly realized that you have to make sure we are counting the right experience, because what's important to remember is the government wants to make sure that whoever they get in that position is going to be able to do that position. So to answer your question, it's good to know how to count up and how to add up your experience. So the recruiters and the hiring managers will probably know, that like you said, that you do 2 weeks in the summertime, maybe some training every month, a couple of days throughout the month. So it will be counted. It won't be counted as if it were like straight 1-for-1 experience. But also, I think it's important to remember, in a time when a lot of reservists and National Guards are being activated and going on deployments, that while you are deployed, that is essentially full-time employment. So it's important to keep track of that. And if you did go to Kuwait while you're in the reserves or in the National Guard, that you make note of that in your resume, so that you can make sure that time counts towards your experience. I think it's also important to know that one of the challenges I had when I was transitioning was I did 6 different MOSs while I was in the military, and it's important to know that if you are applying to a position that requires, we'll say the corpsman or the medical field, medical industry, and you also did a job doing, recruiting, they may not count that time, so to speak. But I guess if you talk to the recruiter a little bit more, read through that job description, because there may be some things, some key bullets that you can point out to say, well, this is administrative in nature. This is leadership and supervision. You may be able to get some of that to count for your military experience, as long as it's relevant and relates to the position that you are interviewing for. So it's kind of a long-winded answer. Hopefully I was able to provide some good feedback for that one.
Well, and this is important from, we're talking compensation here, but this could be the difference between being a junior level something and a mid-level something or a senior level something. That's this is why we're talking not just getting the job, but where do you slot for those jobs, right, and for pay purposes.
Right. And could I jump in there just
real
quick? I was thinking through, with Jonathan's answer, I think this is why we really encourage people to tailor their resumes. I know that's like kind of cliche. You hear that all the time, but tailor your resume, because if you don't take that experience that you have and break it down by MOS, like Jonathan said, so what you did for, your 6 years, if a year of that was in recruiting, then you need to note that. And also, if you spent time, on a deployment and you were doing a certain job, like I was in Bosnia Bosnia, I needed to put those dates that I was in Bosnia and what I did while I was there, because like Jonathan, I did a lot of different things. So I needed to be able to quantify, my experience so that I could say I had X number of years of experience doing whatever it is. So tailor your resume and use dates when you're deployed so that the recruiter really is able to do the math as well.
All right.
Yep. I think tailoring your resume helps because you never know who that recruiter is on the back end looking at that resume. Here at SOSi, we have 6 recruiters that are veterans, prior military service or military spouses. So, they are familiar with that lingo and the language of the military. And I know that's not really compensation focused, but it is important to know. You never know who's on that backside looking at that resume. So you want to make sure you do tailor that resume to help you out as best as possible.
All right. So we had another question come in from LinkedIn, which conveniently enough is pretty much a topic we were going to talk about anyway, but we will lead with the question. One of the LinkedIn users out there wanted to say if you could please speak to your experience relating to negotiating annual leave. And actually, our topic was basically paid time off and federal holidays. So let's just kind of wrap all those things in there together. I mean, Jonathan, I almost called you Gunny there. You remember the days of annual leave and, and 30 days a year and 96 is for every holiday. What's the difference on the outside? And also, can you negotiate those things? Can you get more? Can you get less? Like what's the differences and how does it work?
Okay. Yeah, I definitely can. And this was all a new concept to me. I did not know that you could, what was something that could be negotiated. I didn't know, that, for example, that the weekends they don't count as PTO. If you're not supposed to be working, you don't have to count that as time off. Whereas in the military, if you take a 10-day vacation, you're counting that Saturday and Sunday as a leave day. So that right there off the get-go is one of the big differences is you're only using PTO for time that you would actually be working. And then how it works basically is here at SOSi, all of our new employees start off at an accrual rate of 16 days per year is how many PTO days you earn per year. And that's a little over 3 weeks, 3 work weeks is what that translates to. And then as you stay at the company and earn yourself tenure within the company, once you've been with SOSi for 3 years, that rate increases. And then again, if you've been here for 7 years, which I just crossed that 7-year barrier this past July, that rate increases again. So for us here at SOSi, we have 3 different levels. That first level, second, and then that third tier. It's not now negotiating PTO is probably easier said than done. You just need to know that they're just not going to do that for anyone. It does. For some companies, it may be a little bit different. Here at SOSi, we do require leadership approval for that. So that's, the recruiter's not going to be the one who makes that decision for you, whether you can negotiate more PTO or a higher PTO accrual rate. So it is something that can be done. I do see it from time to time. And what I would add in is the company might be a little bit more flexible to grant that approval for a position where it's a little bit more of a tougher position to fill, maybe more of a more technical type of background where they don't want to lose the candidate, and then maybe they don't have anyone else that they can come back to right away, and it might have to open up the recruiting cycle all over again. So I would say it is something that can be negotiated. It is not something they may not be so quick to do it and give it to you, but it can be done. So again, it just gets back to that initial question or that initial comment. Bring it up, talk to the recruiter, and figure out what you can and can't do while you're in your communication with the recruiters.
And is that separate from the federal holidays, right? So you have X number of federal holidays that SOSi has on the calendar. So your, employees get off so many federal holidays, plus they accrue PTO at whatever rate it is based on their number of years of experience, correct?
Yes, Sarah, that's correct. So we have 10 paid federal government holidays throughout the year. And how we do it is 8 of our days are paid regular holidays. You get them off no matter what. We also get 2 floating holidays that the individual employee can choose to use. So there are 4 options throughout the year, and you get to pick 2 that you can use. That will give you up to your 10 PTO day, or I'm sorry, 10 federal holidays throughout the year. For example, Columbus Day is coming up in a couple of weeks. That's a floating holiday for us, along with the day after Thanksgiving. Not necessarily a quote unquote holiday, but it's a holiday that people like to kind of not go to work on. So
Black Friday.
yeah, definitely. So you do have that to consider. And then, yes, to your point, your PTO days, you're only, if you take a week of PTO and there's a federal holiday in there, say that Monday, you're only taking time off for those 4 remaining days for the rest of the week. So the federal holidays do not count towards your PTO accrual or your usage for time off.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is they're not going to call you in for duty on Christmas. Typically, the bad news is
yep.
You're not going to realize just how many days off you had in the military until you get out and you don't have all those 4-day weekends and stuff like that. So,
right. The surprise long weekends. Hey, I'm off on Friday, or you go to PT and they send you home. Those types of things, not too common on the outside, but
Hey, relocation. A lot of people will say, look, I'm getting out of the Navy or the Marine Corps, whatever, Army. I've got a free move. So some people have got that in their pocket, but also some companies offer relocation. What is relocation? How does it work as far as the initial compensation plan? And is it also negotiable type thing?
Yeah, really good question. And for this, I would like to say it's really a case-by-case scenario here. Mm-hmm. It's good to know especially if you're on the phone with a recruiter for a position that is not where you are presently located, you'll want to ask these questions for sure. Oftentimes, the relocation assistance will be available, but companies may not let you know about that because that's an expense that they just kind of assume that they would rather save because it's all about making money and saving money on the civilian side. So definitely ask the recruiter those questions if that is available, and the recruiter will probably let you know regardless, because again, with the salary piece of it, we'd rather get these questions answered up front. So that we don't go too far along, get you an offer extended, and then find out, you've got a family of 4 and 2 cars and what have you, and all this stuff that you want to move. So it's going to be position specific. Some government contracts do not include a stipulation for relocation. Now, if the position is a position that's overseas, here at SOSi, we have a lot of work overseas, whether it's Europe, the Indo-PACOM region, Japan, Korea, or even in the Middle East. Oftentimes, the relocation will be considered or covered, if you will. But then at that point, you just get into the what's covered and what's not covered. Typically, we'll fly you out there for sure. And again, every contract is going to be different with what they cover and what they don't cover. Storage of household goods or movement, shipping of household goods will vary from position to position. But then also, if you've got a vehicle that you've got to move, pack up, also lodging, temporary lodging, where you're going to, you may not have a place to live right away. So these are all things that do get covered within relocation typically, but sometimes they don't. So it's important to ask those questions. And then the other thing that you need to consider also is how is it covered? Is it covered up front? Is it fully covered where the employee or the candidate doesn't have to fork out any costs, or is it something where they have to pay for it up front and then they get that expensed and reimbursed back to them upon receipts and whatnot. So I've seen it both ways, and it's important to make sure you know that before jumping too far in, so that you can make the sound decision on whether the position is right for you.
And so, I kind of jumping back when we had talked about the healthcare benefits, is because you want to bring this up early, right? As the candidate, you want to ask this question early. If someone is a transitioning service member and they have that one last move, should they ask if they can have, that increased salary because they don't require relocation? Is that, a question that you've heard? Is it, it just came to me, because we talked the same kind of thing in the healthcare.
So I think it just goes back to the point that I feel that salaries are usually so to speak, a different pot of money than some of these other expenses, and the company may be able to come up with your relocation assistance through some other avenue or some other means of the budget to cover those expenses. So it may not really make a difference, is what I'm saying, if you do ask for the salary increase, but it doesn't hurt to ask. And then where I see where it may make a difference is if you do have to come up with these costs up front and then you get it reimbursed to you and after you start, then in that situation, I have seen where they will be open to increase your salary a little bit to sort of compensate for the fact that you have to come up with the expenses ahead of time, or maybe offer you a one-time sign-on bonus or something like that to sort of, counter the fact that you have to come up with those relocation expenses up front.
I would say, just remember.
I was going to say, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, when you keep talking about negotiating and stuff like that, I would remind our transitioning veteran job seekers, it's really going to depend on how in demand your skills are, because you're negotiating a hand, and if you've got the kind of skill set and the kind of clearance that they're really having a hard time finding, they're going to do more. But if you're one of 10 people that could do the job, and Jonathan's already talking to those 10 people, you don't have as strong a hand to play to negotiate this benefit or that benefit, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's again, the business is going to consider all factors when they want to extend something out that's going to be another, an added cost, so to speak. So it's always good to know, what your background is, and the recruiter will probably give you a little bit of insight also if you may get a clue that you're the only one recruiting or you're the only one interviewing for a position just through a regular casual conversation with the recruiter, or you may find out that there's 3 or 4 other candidates that have also interviewed for the position, and it's pretty competitive. So just some things to keep in mind.
We're with Jonathan Everhardt from SOSi. We're talking about compensation here. Normally, we usually get these things done in about 30 minutes, but we're going to go a little bit long. Jonathan doesn't mind sticking around. He said we're not going to get to all of our questions, but we've still got a couple more that we wanted to hit on. So let's stick with when we're talking about things. We talked a little bit about medical issues, but like when it comes to medical and disability, not just the payments, but also some people say, hey, when should I start talking about days I might need off? We talked about PTO days and holidays, but what if I've got to go to my VA appointments, or I've got to get my VA appointments those first 6 months after you get out? Can be still trying to finalize those types of things. Do you talk about that? Do you not talk about that? Where does this work?
Yeah. So what I encourage our candidates and job seekers to do, and the recruiters also, is to get them in touch with their hiring manager. If a position's been, an offer's been accepted and we have a start date scheduled, or they're in a screening process, I try to allow the recruiters to have full transparency with things like this. With we are a military friendly company with a lot of our work supporting DoD. So many of our hiring managers, if they weren't veterans before, they're supporting an Army contract or a DoD contract or something where they understand how the military process, the transition process works. And so they have that flexibility to just be a manager and manage their team. So what we encourage the candidates to do is to, just like you would do in the military, reach out to your NCO or your boss or your supervisor and just let them know that you've got an appointment. And usually more times than not, they will, have that flexibility to be able to figure it out for you so that you can attend your required appointments and whatnot. We're usually not too tough on that because we've all been there and been through that transition before and understand what everyone is going through. There are different options. Basically, if you get the time off, you'll just, if it's a government contract, you will probably just end up, making it up later in the day or maybe later out throughout the week. But the better the relationship you have with the hiring manager, the easier it is to be able to just bring it up and get that time off so you can go take care of your appointments.
All right. Well, we have had a great time talking to you, Jonathan. So what if all these people out there in LinkedIn land decided that they wanted to apply for a job? You talked to them, you said you were the perfect fit, and they said, I'm dropping my papers right now. The question is, can I work on terminal leave?
Okay, I would say I did. when I transitioned out of the Marine Corps, I worked for 3 weeks while I was on terminal leave before I hit my end of service date. So I would say yes, but with some caveats, right? Of course, it's always good to get a second opinion, right? You just want to make sure that you are you're not going to have any conflict of interest. So if you're an officer, for sure, you'll want to engage your base legal office or your legal office on post to just double check, what the position is that you're going for and make sure that there's not going to be any conflict of interest. Usually there's no worries about transitioning to work while on terminal leave if you are enlisted. But if you are an officer, it's good to bring it up, talk with your recruiter, and also get that opinion of your legal office just to have them review the position, job offer, and all that sort of thing, just to make sure there's not going to be any government conflict of interest if you take the position.
That's a great question. That's certainly something that as a recruiter, I heard that one several times. And I don't think there were many. I know there was at least one where someone couldn't work. And so know that is an important question to ask because it is possible that it won't work. So certainly something to be asking when you're a part of that process. I would keep going back to the same thing, be open with the recruiter that you're working with, asking the questions, up front, because, especially when it's a very military friendly company like SOSi, where you have a lot of veterans in the positions in recruiting that have been there. So they are here to help. So ask the questions and they will either know it or find the answer for you.
Yeah, that I think is the biggest thing, Sarah, is engage your recruiter when you're talking to somebody. If they're interested in you for your skill set, ask questions, because Jonathan will tell you it's your job to put the person there. You're working for the company, but also to make sure everything goes smoothly. So you would much rather have questions than find out stuff later on, right?
Right. And, I like to say this was all new to me when I went through this experience. My previous job that I had before the Marine Corps was in 1995 at a Long John Silver's. There are very few of those that are even in existence these days. And the whole transition process was brand new to me, didn't have a clue what I was doing. And, you only know what you know. And so, things like this that we're doing are great to be able to offer, some ideas and things to talk about so that you can go in and make your transition as smooth as possible. Because, the company wants you to stick around too. We don't want you to kind of get seated and start and then realize that something isn't right. And, this isn't the right opportunity for me, and then quickly go to move on. We want to make sure that you're going to be there for the long term. So we're going to try and, help you out and allow for a smooth transition as best as we can.
Awesome. Sarah, did we miss anything?
I don't think so, but I have to say, being a military spouse that will be going through this process with my husband here in the next couple of years, I love having these conversations because I learned so much. I mean, there are things that I knew before, but it continues to grow. The questions, some of the ones that your team, Jonathan, that they brought up weren't things that I had thought of. So, I hope that the people who are listening and the people who will listen to this later, learn something. And, if you have more questions as time goes on, because they will, can they find you somewhere, Jonathan? Is it okay to have people reach out to you and your team and just ask questions?
Yes, absolutely. It is. We're all on LinkedIn. We get messages daily from service members. ClearedJobs also, you can reach. I'm sorry, not ClearedJobs. ClearedJobs. Is another one. We all have our own accounts through that. And then email. It's not hard to be able to get our email out there. And I don't know if this is something that we can do here or provide that out. But yeah, absolutely. We the recruiters on our team. We've been through this. A couple of retirees on my team, so they've gone through that transition also. And so definitely open to be able to give that feedback and just be able to try and help somebody out. Even if it's one person, that's one person that, got their questions answered.
Yeah. And hey, shameless plug, we at ClearedJobs.Net have a job fair coming up this Thursday. And I will be hosting a panel discussion with some other recruiters. So if you happen to be in the Northern Virginia area and have any kind of a clearance at all, it's an all clearances event. You can go to that job fair. You can find more information on our website. But I'll be talking to different recruiters about topics like this, because we really do, Jonathan, we appreciate so much getting your guys' feedback. You at SOSi, terrific organization, and job seekers out there. These recruiters really work hard, and especially if they were veterans themselves, they want to help you. They really, really do. So engage them, ask them questions. But I can't thank you enough for your time today, Jonathan. I can't thank you enough for, hanging around here 10, 15 minutes extra too. So well, thank you so very much.
No worries. It's my pleasure. I love doing this kind of stuff. And again, when I went through the transition, there were a lot of questions that I had, and I thought to myself, there's got to be an easier way, or just any. I kind of made a pledge to myself that I'll, if I can, I'll help out when I can. And this is one of those examples of just being able to help out the military community and get them on their way. So right. Certainly appreciate the time, and glad, Sarah, that you reached out to me for this.
Absolutely. Yes. When Bob and I talked about this, I said, "Ooh, Jonathan would be great." And you are. So we appreciate you. And I know that those who are listening are really grateful for what they've learned today. And I'm sure, they are now thinking of other questions to ask you.
Yeah. And there might be some questions on LinkedIn. If you didn't get your question answered live, if you put a question in LinkedIn, we will do our best to try to get you a response. I know there's one of them that was kind of lengthy, so we didn't get a chance to get into it on live. But thank you, everybody. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.
All right. Thanks.
Take
Bye.
care.
Yep.